Hi everybody. As a lot of you already know, I have been having issues with my T Bar Cichlid that is, in my T Bar tank, and I've decided to rehome him. And I am going to rehome him in this tank. This is my Purple Spotted Gudgeon, and the tank is actually listed on my playlist as my Australian tank. It was intended to be an Australian themed tank, but it never really turned out that way, and I've honestly just never gotten around to changing the name on the playlist. But this is my Gudgeon tank, and it is soon going to be housing my Gudgeon and my T Bar Cichlid. I don't know what else it's going to be. This tank is going to be very experimental, and it's going to just sort of develop as it develops. But today I decided is the day we're going to move the T Bar into this Gudgeon tank. However, I checked the pH in this tank and I checked the pH in my T Bar tank because these tanks are notoriously higher than my other tanks, and I don't really know why. I've never been able to explain why I have such elevated pH. In this case, the pH in my T Bar tank was a little above neutral, about 7.2, and the pH in this tank was very much higher. It was about 7.6. That's a little more than I want to shift my T Bar suddenly, and I don't want to go through a long transition period. So what I have done is I've done about a 25% water change on this tank, and I've brought the pH down a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to wait 24 hours and we're going to do another water change, and we're going to bring the pH down a little more, and that way my Gudgeon won't be shocked by lowering the pH too much, and my T Bar won't be shocked by too much of an increase in the pH, and I'm going to meet them somewhere in the middle, and that will be fine. So in the meantime, I need to get some rocks in here so I can set up some cave structure for the T Bar to live in and work around. So we're going to go collect some rocks, and we're going to start preparing some rocks, and that's going to be the first stage of getting this tank ready. We'll do that, and then we'll do another water change tomorrow, and we will start putting rocks in place and getting ready for the T Bar to go in there. In the meantime, we are going to go rock collecting, so let's go, and we will see what we can come up with today. Alright everybody, here we are down the street from my house. This is a little stream called Murphy's Run. It runs across the street from me, and this is a place down the street about a half mile or so. It's actually a public area where I'm allowed to come, and it's not in anybody's property. So I come down here, and this is where we've got the crayfish from my crayfish tank, and I'm also going to be collecting some small minnows or maybe some sculpins or something else is going to come out of here, and that will also go into my crayfish tank at some point in the near future. But today we are here for some rocks. So when I'm selecting rocks for any given tank, I always think about the size of the tank, the size of the animal, and the size of the caves I'm going to want to be creating. I also think about the shape of the rocks. I need to have rocks that are more structural and more squared off and upright, that give me elevation. And you can hear the pileated woodpecker down there. I don't know of any other woodpecker that's big enough to make noises that loud, so I'm sure that's a pileated. I don't know if we'll get to see it or not while we're out here, but you never know, we might. But in addition to the more structural rocks, I am going to need flat rocks that give me either walls or ceilings or you know, the things that create the gaps, the caves. This is a great rock here, although it's a little large for my purposes, and actually now that I'm picking it up I can see it's a little thicker than I was originally thinking, so that's definitely going to be out of the question. I don't need anything particularly huge, some rocks like this, and once these clean up and once we get them all scrubbed down and everything, they will look considerably different. So I think this one can come back with us. This one here actually looks like a pretty good one. It's not quite as bulky and squared off as I was hoping for, so we're going to leave that one there, but that is always a potential. Let's see. Another thing I consider when I'm doing this is, you see how rocks like this are interesting looking, but certainly not natural. You can tell that that is simply a rock that was used on a construction project nearby and is washed down. There's another one, here's another one. Interesting, but they do not go with the feel of the other rocks. So if I'm bringing rocks home that are comprised of this, I'm not going to put it in the tank right next to something like that. that's just going to look completely unnatural and ridiculous. This is one that I think we might take. It's a little on the large side, it's a little thick, but it's actually got some curvature there, so that will actually give me more space than initially appears when you look at it. So that'll be one that can go. Oh, let's see. See, now that's a nice large rock that will give me some upright structure. It's an interesting shape. It's got some cavitation in it, so no matter how I set it, I'm going to have some space underneath of it. So this one will definitely go home with us. I like that too. It's fairly small, but it will serve a nice purpose, and it's a good looking rock. Once these get cleaned up, they will look a lot different. And if you collect rocks often enough and you do this often enough, you'll sort of tend to get the feel for what you're looking at, even though they're all filthy when you're picking them up. And of course, they're all the indigenous rocks that come from around here. So I know what the rocks and the earth and the bones and everything look like around here, and I can tell what is natural and what is not. See, these are all going to be going in a mere 40-gallon tank, so they may not look very large out here in nature, but once we get them back and put them in a 40-gallon tank, these rocks are suddenly going to look a lot bigger than they do now. See, that'll be a beautiful rock once we get it cleaned up. But all these little things, these are all living animals, so these are definitely going to need to be sterilized and cleaned up, and we will get to that when we get back to the house. We will have a look at the way we're going to do it. I'm going to do it a little different this time than I've done it before, so that will be new. Let's see, I want one more good structural rock, and I think that'll do it. I like that one. And then we could probably use one more flat rock that's of a medium size, and I think that'll be enough for us to be going on with. And of course, this is right down the street, so if I decide later I need more, or the rocks I have are too big or too small or anything else, I can always come down and replace them. I actually do have some rocks at the house that are just lying around that have been in and out of tanks, and I do have a few little odds and ends I can pick from at the house. Now this one keeps shouting out at me. I really like the structure, really like the way this one looks. It almost looks like petrified wood. When you get in and get that cleaned up, that's going to have like a grain, like a wood grain appearance to it. Very, very striated. So I don't know what I'm going to do with this one yet, but it keeps talking to me, so it's coming home, and it'll be a paperweight or something. I really like it. So it'll be something someday in one tank somewhere. All right. That's a nice size and shape right there too. So I think we will call that good. We probably are going to need some smaller rocks than this. Now that I'm looking at that, that's an awful lot of fairly large stones in there, just for going in a 40. So we're probably going to be back. I don't know if that'll be on video, but we will have to wait and see. Let's go home and get these cleaned up, and we will see where we go from there. I'm going to have to do a little bit of climbing here, so this is where the video will end. And I will see you all back at the fish room. Alright everybody, here we are the following morning. Did not realize the camera lens had fogged up the way it had until after I got home and reviewed the footage. It was about 1,000,000 degrees yesterday, and it's looking to be that hot again today. So we're out here about 8:30 in the morning, and we are actually going to boil some water on my grill here, and that's how we're going to treat these rocks. I did check already, and this is the largest of the rocks, and it will indeed fit in. So we're probably going to have to do this a few small rocks at a time. That rock may have some size issues when we get to it, but the important thing is that we're boiling them in the water. And the reason that's important, I don't know if this one's going to be fully submerged or not. The reason it's important that we're boiling them is because the water will actually regulate the temperature. I've heard a lot of people talk about putting rocks in their stove or their oven or something. Let's see how hot that still is. Okay, that cooled it down enough for me to touch it. We can put this one down here. And that one up there, and that way everybody's fully submerged. Now, if you put rocks in your oven, that will certainly sterilize them, but what happens is you run the risk of the rocks actually popping or exploding to a small degree. The reason they do this is moisture gets trapped inside, and if it gets too heated, it becomes what they call superheated. It gets above the boiling point, but it can't boil because of the internal pressures within the rock. And eventually something's got to give, and boom, you can have chunks of rock flying. This doesn't happen often, but it can happen. So you can do some damage inside your stove or something like that. It's just not something you want to happen. By putting it in boiling water, the water will come up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius, which is more than hot enough to kill any organisms that we're going to be worried about, believe me. And the key is that the boiling water prevents it from going over 212 degrees. It's a temperature regulator. So that allows us to boil the stuff. We can do it for long enough. You want to make sure that the rocks achieve that 200 degree or more temperature all the way through, not just superficially. So we're going to give them a good long boil. We're going to let them cool down, and then when they're cool, we'll start the next batch, and we'll go ahead and do that. Here we are about 15 minutes later, and the water is slowly coming up to a boil. I went inside and got my digital thermometer. And you can see we are up around 180 degrees, a little above 180 degrees. I don't know what temperature we need to achieve to kill algae or any kind of microbes that might infect a fish tank. I know for foodborne illnesses you need to achieve a temperature of 165 degrees. So I'm assuming we're probably safe once we get beyond 165 degrees. If no foodborne illnesses can live beyond that, I can't imagine algae or anything else really living beyond that. But we are going to let it go ahead and just keep on going. I don't know if it will be able to get all the way up to a rolling boil outside in a nice breezy conditions like this, but it is possible. And as I said, we're already well over the 165 degree mark, and it looks like we're still climbing, so we probably are going to achieve a full boil here in a few minutes. The trick will be to make sure we leave it going long enough that that temperature is achieved all the way through the rock. I want the entire rock to be 165 degrees all the way through, and that way we will know that any life that may be living deep down inside of, and believe me, rocks do have life living deep down inside of little tiny cracks and fissures. So just better safe than sorry. You want to make sure that that rock achieves at least 165 degrees all the way through, and it should be well sterilized. Once it's done, we'll have to let the water cool down, as I said, and then we'll go ahead and start scrubbing them up. And they should be pretty easy to clean once they've been boiled. Everything on the surface should just slough right off, and we should have some nice beautiful rocks to look at here fairly shortly. So I will see you then, and we'll see what we've got to work with. Alright, we've finished boiling everything, and when I was finished I set the rocks out to dry, and of course they were very hot from being boiled, so they dried out, and then they got very crispy and everything caked on there. So I subsequently soaked them in water for about the last hour, and hopefully we've got everything softened back up. So we're just going to use a nice fairly stiff bristle brush here. Remember, everything on here has already been cleaned and sterilized. We just want to make it look pretty, so I'm not really worried about if I get everything off because there's nothing living left on it. So that's what we're starting with, and let's see what scrubbing that out a little bit will look like. So you can see we're starting to get some of the nice silver color that you find in the rocks around here. Let's try to do a little bit of this side. So as much as I want to bring out the true color of the rock itself, I'm not going to go crazy with trying to get every little bit of that discoloration off of there. The reason being is it's going to grow back and develop its own patina once it's in the tank anyway. So let's just try to give everybody a look at what a few of these have the potential to look like and then I will get on with cleaning them up, because this is going to take a little while and a lot of elbow grease, so I don't want to spend 10 minutes of video on one rock. But there's a lot of beauty hidden underneath of all of this algae and off-walks and microorganisms that are growing all over these rocks. So that's beginning to show a little bit of the true coloration in there, and you can see some of the striations in here. We'll do some video in a little while once I've got these all cleaned up and we get a better look at what they really look like. These more structural rocks are made out of different components than the other ones, minerals I should say. So these actually clean up and look very different coloration wise than the other ones do, the flat rocks. The flat rocks tend to have a silvery sort of color to them, and these have more of earth tones and browns to them. So you can see how the colors just start coming out even with just the minor brief scrubbing like this. They already look a lot different than they did when they were in the stream, just from boiling it. See, look how beautiful that's starting to be. So last but not least, let's have a look at this one a little bit. That'll give you a much better look at this sort of silvery color I'm talking about. And then of course this side will look very similar once I get it scrubbed up. So I'm going to get on with this. Not going to bother videoing every little bit of it. But once these are cleaned up, we're going to go do another water change on the tank. And while we're doing the water change, we're going to see about getting some of these put in place and see how they look. And maybe we'll move them around a little bit, just start toying with some different places to put them. But you can see I got a lot to work with, and that's going to make quite a bit of cave structure. And of course I have little odds and ends and rocks and stuff all over the place from other tanks and other collection days, etc. So let's get on with it, and I will see you back over at the tank. Alright, one final segment before we get back over to the tank. What I did was I scrubbed these minimally just because they're going to get completely covered again. Normally when I scrub them down clean, it was all part of my pre-treatment and my sterilization process. Since I boiled them, I'm not concerned about putting any live organisms in the tank. So if they're a little brown or a little stained with the patina of looking like they've just come from a living environment, that's fine. That's actually what I want, and they're going to develop that patina in the tank soon enough anyway. But for the sake of example, I went out and I got a few of the rocks that I had sitting on my porch. Same rocks, same basic, chemical construct, and that is what we would see should we get them all nice and scrubbed up clean. It's a very silvery sort of look. There's a striation to it. Really pretty rocks. I like them. And then of course our other ones are going to be more of these earth tones, and these are actually all possible candidates that might go in the tank. I like this one. It's a little light colored for me compared to all the others, but it provides a nice contrast, and the structure on this one is just fantastic. You can do so many things with it. Unfortunately, it does have one side that's fairly unattractive, but that usually gets positioned somewhere where you can't see it. The other thing I wanted to go over briefly was the chemical makeup of the rocks. If you're using anything that is a limestone based rock, it will buffer your pH and it will raise the pH in your tank. The simple way to test for it is to use a little bit of vinegar, and you put it on the rock. You just pour some vinegar on there, and if you get a reaction, and by reaction I mean you will see little bubbles foaming and fizzing, and that will indicate that it is a limestone based rock and that it will actually buffer your pH way up eventually in the tank. Unfortunately, I don't have anything that will react to the vinegar. I don't even have a piece of chalk. I have no example to show you. I was going to show you what it looks like on a non-reactive surface, and then I was going to show you the reactive surface, but there's no reactive surface, so there's no point in showing you the non-reactive surface, because it will simply look like I'm pouring water on the rocks. That's what you should see. If you pour vinegar on a rock, it should look just like you poured water on a rock. If it doesn't, if you see any kind of foam or bubbles or any kind of reaction at all, you will know you've got a limestone-based product, whether it's marble or limestone directly or whatever. It will buffer your pH up. Now, having said that, I will also add that I'm just talking about pH. I'm not talking about any other chemical makeup of the rock. If the rock is made out of silicates, you may be releasing silicates into your tank. If there's copper ore in the rock, then you may be releasing copper into your tank. I'm simply talking about using the vinegar test to test for whether or not it will affect your pH, and no other chemical parameters within your tank. So take that for what you will. I am done with everything over here. Next move is over back to the tank, and we're going to start doing a water change and start looking at where these rocks can go and how we can set them up. Alright everybody, we're coming down the home stretch here, at least for this part of the video. We're not actually going to move the T-bar today, but we are going to get these rocks in here, and we're going to see what we can do with them. I have picked up a few more that I've had lying around in various places, so this is what I've got to work with. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do yet. I haven't done any sort of test sites or anything like that, so let's just get started and start putting some stuff in. This, I think, can probably go up here on this front corner. That will give me some decent structure, and we can start working off of that, and we will go from there. Hopefully I won't disturb this gudgeon too much. Now remember, my T-bar is going to get in here, and he is going to dig and dig and dig, so all of this stuff is going to be sitting on the bare glass eventually. So I want to get it down as close to the glass as I can initially, so that when the T-bar starts moving things around, nothing shifts and falls and settles to the bottom. I want it to already be there. Let's see, I think what we're gonna do is build an actual cave for him, and this will be another piece that'll be good for the end. And I think this piece here will go it's a little wobbly. Let's see how it looks the other way. Oh, I like that much better. It's much more stable and it looks better. So that is a little bit of structure. Then we can just take a few other pieces and we can do some simple stuff like this. I am unfortunately going to be having to work around some of the stuff I've already got planted in here. Now this is going to provide as much sort of visual appeal I hope. Almost knocked my brackish tank over. That would have been a lot of fun. So let's try, that's probably going to be a little too small for what I've just made. Let's try this big one. This is one of the ones I just collected. I'm going to try to get it to sit in a little bit of a cave structure, but it's going to unfortunately again require me moving a lot of these micro swords, and hopefully I will be able to keep the roots underground enough that this is all going to work out. Now keep in mind also that this is not necessarily 100% going to be the way this ends up. I can always change it later if I don't like it, if it doesn't work out. So you can just take small stuff like this and you can kind of prop it in just to give it a little more structure, a little more texture. Will give the fish more sense of security when he's in there. And it will give us a little something more interesting to look at. So my only concern at this point really is going to be that the gudgeon decides he wants to have himself a little bit of cave to live in as well, and I might start running into issues where I need more than one cave structure. If that is the case, then hopefully setting up something small over here will give enough room that both of them will be able to find some kind of happy medium where they're not really getting in each other's way too much. Now I will say that doing this sort of rough and ready while I'm trying to think about shooting video and explain what I'm doing when I'm doing it is definitely putting a crimp on the creative juices. I'm not going to lie about that. So I really do feel like I'm just sort of slapping some stuff in here just for the sake of doing a video. Water change is getting down to about where we're going to stop and start refilling the tank, and I think that's what I'm going to leave it at just for now. It'll give the gudgeon a chance to get used to some new structure in the tank. It'll give us an idea of what's going on, and I'll spend another day or two having a look at this and sort of thinking about it and deciding whether or not we're going to go ahead with this or make any more changes. So last little bit of this video is going to be once we're done this water change, I'll get everything all nice and cleaned up, and we'll have a look at how it is with the rocks in there the way they are now when the tank's all set up and ready to go. So sit tight and I'll be right back with you. Alright everybody, there you go. Well, I've got to say, I think this tank just got 100 times more interesting. It seems to me that I was not lacking interesting fish in this tank, I was lacking interesting architecture, or structure if you will. I'm so much happier with this. It's been about an hour since I got the rocks in and the water change finished, the water settled down. I've been back in there a few times and picked a few of the floating water sprite out. It was a bit overwhelming with how much was swirling around in the water column and everything, and I've just kind of let the tank settle down for a bit before I decided I would shoot a video. And as I was hoping, if I stood here still enough for a few moments, the gudgeon would go down from the top where he's been waiting for food, and he would begin acting the way he's been acting for the last hour or so that I've been watching him. And he has taken to this batch of caves like a duck to water, and he just looks so awesome in and out of them and lying on the rocks, and he just looks so much more at home. And this tank suddenly went from being a very boring and unappealing tank that I was sort of thinking about getting rid of to a very interesting tank that I'm quite happy with, and I'm really looking forward to getting the T Bar in here. I'm a little bit afraid of the fireworks that may ensue, but you know what? Whatever. We'll find out what happens. I've got other tanks, and worst case scenario, I suppose I could always put the T Bar back where I got him, although I don't really think I would do that. But whatever. I've got other options. Let's go with putting him in here for the time being and see what happens. I do have trouble focusing on this gudgeon. I've got my autofocus turned off at the moment, and it actually seems to be working better. Someone suggested that. Apparently the colors on this fish make it very difficult for my camera to even pick up and try to focus on. So I'm actually quite happy with the way this one's turning out. He looks really good. Again, I'm thrilled with this tank. I've just been sitting here looking at it for the last hour. I'm really happy with the behavior of the fish. I'm really happy with the way the tank looks and the rocks. I know I just kind of threw them in there, but I really don't see any need to change it or do anything with it. That looks pretty good to me. So there you go. Look forward to the video real soon of the T Bar being in there. I don't know if I'm actually going to film me trying to collect him up or not. That can be an arduous, time-consuming experience, but we'll see how that goes. I may do something with it, I may not. In the meantime, thanks for watching this one. Go ahead and subscribe if you're not already. I know this was a doozy, but that's not unusual for me. I do half-an-hour videos on a fairly regular basis, and I also do 2-minute videos and everything in between. So thanks for watching this one again, and I will see you real soon on the next one.